From King Salman's golden palace to his flight of golden jets and his golden escalator, it comes as no surprise that the reigning Saudi king is a fan of all that glitters. Join us today as we uncover the trillionaire life of King Salman. The Saudi royal family has a collective net worth of approximately $1.4 trillion. For context, it would take the average person over 16 million years to save up that much. That is, of course, if you save every single dime you make. The $1.4 trillion is, however, distributed among some 200 members of the family, effectively bringing down their net worth to a few billion. That doesn't sound too bad now, does it? The man in charge of the royal fund is none other than the reigning king of Saudi Arabia, King Salman bin Abdulaziz bin Saud. The 86-year-old king assumed power in 2015 after the death of his half-brother Abdullah. He had previously been the governor of Riyadh for close to 48 years. Basically, King Salman's always been in a position of power and authority. Not surprisingly, his personal net worth is close to $18 billion, effectively making him the 16th richest man on the Forbes 100 list. But we could have already assumed that the king of Saudi Arabia would have been among the richest in the world and have a net worth with a whole lot of zeros. What is interesting, however, is how King Salman uses his trillions and billions. King Salman traveled through Asia as part of a diplomatic mission back in 2017. While the newly appointed king's endeavors to build relations with countries in the Eastern continent were admirable, headlines that ran from his trip were mainly surrounding his lavish spending. For example, the fact that he landed in Indonesia on a gold escalator. While in Japan, King Salman flew in two of his personal Mercedes-Benz S600 limousines and had over 500 limousines ferried to Tokyo to move around his entourage through the capital. His entourage, speaking of, consisted of close to 620 staff members and over 800 delegates. That's not all. The king made sure that all top hotels in Tokyo would be booked during his stay. Reportedly, some 1,200 rooms were booked under the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to accommodate the king, his delegates, and staff members. Besides the king's personal golden 747 jet, the royal family also commissioned 6 Boeing passenger jets to carry around the 1,500 people who accompanied the king throughout Asia. A golden escalator sounds like it'd probably be made up. Who could possibly ever own a gold? King Salman, of course. He doesn't just have one golden escalator in his golden-colored jet, he has 2. One just didn't seem enough. His extravagant escalator made headlines during the king's trip to Indonesia, where he was greeted by Indonesian President Joko Widodo and a guard of honor. If you thought that was crazy, let's talk about the time the royal family attempted to build an escalator on a beach. Shortly after being crowned king, Salman bin Saud decided it was in the family's best interest to take a trip to their seafront villa in Vallauris, France. Reportedly, the king was accompanied by members of his inner circle, close to 800 people. While this would have been a boom for the local community, it instead caused an uproar. Why? Because the royal family attempted to pour concrete right on top of the sand to build an escalator for the king. Over 100,000 residents of the area petitioned against the government's capitalization of the beach and claimed that then-President François Hollande was selling off the French Rivera to the highest bidder. Not that it was the case, but King Salman actually does have enough of a net worth to buy out the entire beach. In any event, the royal family closed off the beach to public access for the entirety of their 3-week stay in the family's villa. King Salman wants every place he visits to feel like home, which begs the question, what's his actual home like? The King of Saudi Arabia has over 12 palaces to choose from. We'll be talking a bit about the details inside a few of them, the most bizarre and enviable ones, that is. We're kicking it off with the king's official residence, the Al-YAMAMAH Palace, which is also the site for the royal court. Yamamah literally translates to the Eye of Riyadh, a befitting name for the palace that boasts the fanciest palace in all of Saudi Arabia, and possibly the world. The king is a fan of gold, no surprises there, and his royal home reflects his love for all that's shiny, glittery, and costs an arm and a leg. The outside of the palace boasts traditional Saudi architecture with intricate geometric motifs, arched windows, and domes. However, the inside serves as a diplomacy of its own, with Italian marble floors and intricate ornaments from all across the globe. The Al-YAMAMAH Palace is one of the oldest palaces in all of Saudi Arabia, although it goes through several renovations every year to keep it looking spick and span. They have to, not just because of the fact that it's home home to the king of the country, but also because the Al-YAMAMAH Palace serves as the site for Saudi delegations, plus where the family hosts some of their hundreds of VIP guests from all over the world. You could say that the palace serves as King Salman's workstation. So where does he go from his work palace to unwind? Spoiler, it's another palace. When the king's looking to revisit Saudi architecture in all of its glory or relish in the history of the royal family, he picks up his golden suitcase and travels to the Al-YAMAMAH Palace. Now, the Al-YAMAMAH Palace isn't as fancy as the Al-YAMAMAH Palace. In fact, it's probably the oldest palace in the entire country, but it boasts Saudi architecture and features several images and relics from kings before King Salman ascended to the throne in 2015. The RIVERA Palace can be seen in all of its glory through old footage from former US President Barack Obama's 2015 visit to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. In the footage, you'll notice gold furnishings, chandeliers that could act as standalone art pieces, and stunning architecture. It's the second most decorated palace after the Al-YAMAMAH Palace. Some even believe that the king had the RIVERA Palace modeled exactly like the one in Riyadh to regain a semblance of familiarity. If we were kings, we'd probably do that too. Did you know, just like the king had the RIVERA Palace decorated to mimic the Al-YAMAMAH Palace, King Salman also had Washington's Four Seasons Hotel redecorated. Is that even possible? Back in 2014, King Salman took a trip to Washington. This was admittedly before he had ascended to the throne, but he was a shoo-in for the post. Anyway, the king visited Washington on a diplomatic mission and was accompanied by his usual triple-digit entourage. Befitting of the royal family's known lavish lifestyle, all 202 rooms of the Four Seasons Hotel were fully booked. You could say King Salman had full control over the hotel during his stay. He intended on making the place feel as homely as possible by having the entire hotel redecorated. Golden ornaments and furnishings, tables, chairs, lamps, and even hooks were ordered in from Saudi Arabia and installed throughout the hotel during the king's stay. He also dictated that the carpets should be replaced with the royal family's synonymous red carpets, including laying a carpet in the lower parking garage to keep King Salman from directly touching the ground. At this point, you can pretty much predict what a usual diplomatic trip for the king would consist of: a large entourage, ordering golden furniture from Saudi Arabia, having his own food traveling with him, his golden escalator, and then booking out an entire luxury hotel. The king's 2017 trip checked all of his boxes, but we're going to talk about the fact that the royal family spent close to $3 million just to get guests to give up their reservations and have permanent residents live elsewhere during the king's stay at the luxury hotels. Interestingly enough, the hotel management and the residents complied. We don't know how, but they were willing to move out to let the king have an entire hotel to himself. His 2017 trip to Moscow was also marked by the fact that his golden escalator malfunctioned right as the king was descending down. After the escalator stopped midway, the king had to walk down the rest of the steps, like a commoner no less. King Salman's one of the richest people in the world. How do you think the rest of those select few live? Are they as fond of gold as the Saudi king? What do you think? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more.